Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Kinsman, Director of the UNM STEMH Center, and we are so excited to have been able to bring together a group of awesome Research Challenge alumni from all different years. And we have an incredible moderator, Susanna Clary, who's also an alumnus and one of our category judge chairs for Research Challenge Now. So I'm going to turn it over to Susanna and we will kick this off.
Thank you, Karen. So I want to start out with introductions. So I'll introduce myself, and then I want everybody to take a moment to introduce themselves as well. So my name is Susanna Clary. I'm an archaeologist and a biologist. I graduated from UNM. I currently work for a company called Tierra Right-of-Way Services. And so we do a lot of government consulting and contracting. And so a typical day at my job is anywhere from writing up reports, NEPA, Section 106, to right-of-way acquisitions for big public improvement projects. I might be in the field for 8 days, surveying in the mountains, or I could be actually, like meeting with engineers, project managers, etc. So my career has really blossomed. I'm very lucky that I can do both. I can still do all the field stuff I like, but I can still be in the office and grow my career. 2 or 3 things that I remember that made the most impact to me from the Research Challenge and going to ISEF was being able to talk to people, being able to have professional conversations. I think really molded me and made it easy for me to get into a career that I am in now in the public infrastructure sector. And, I just have a different mindset about getting work done and helping people, and also building those relationships. So that's really, really important. And I started going to regionals. I was trying to do the math. I went to regionals first in like 2003. And then when I was in high school, my freshman year, I went to ISEF 2005, 2006, and 2007, and I placed every year. And then my senior year, I didn't do a project. I just started judging. So since then, I've been volunteering with Central New Mexico Research Challenge for 14 years, and I'm the Animal Sciences Junior Category Chair. So who would like to go first? Okay, all right.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. I'm really excited. My name is Katie Liberatore. I am currently Senior Manager of Trait Discovery and Targeting at a biotechnology company called Calyxt in Minnesota. I really got my start in science from participation in the science fair. So participated in the regional or Central New Mexico Research Challenge in 2002 and 2003, as well as in state competitions both of those years. Was able to participate also at the Intel ISEF Fair in 2003 and placed 4th that year, which was really just a cherry on top. I think what was so exciting to me about that opportunity and about the science fair in general was the ability to see the next generation of scientists. I remember walking around ISEF and just being so amazed that there were so many young blossoming scientists that I got to interact with. And then of course, all of the judges who were PhD level scientists. And so that was just an amazing experience to be able to interact with scientists at that level that I was aspiring to be. After the science fair, I went to University of New Mexico, graduated with my bachelor's of science degree there, and then completed my PhD at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in biological sciences as well, focusing on plant genetics and plant developmental biology. And then went to USDA for a postdoc and finally landed the position at Calyxt, first as a research scientist, and now I've moved into a leadership role within the company.
Wonderful. I think Rebecca is up next.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rebecca. I'm currently in my 3rd year at Stanford University for my undergrad. I'm majoring in computer science with a specific track in artificial intelligence. And I have 2 minors that I'm working on, dance and comparative studies in race and ethnicity. And yeah, I was basically participating in the research challenge from like 2012 to 2017. I went to ISEF the year of 2016. And yeah, throughout that whole experience, I just remember like being super excited and super validated that like there was a whole room of students my age that are just being listened to about like really innovative research. I think that definitely set me off on the research path for sure.
Great, thank you so much, Rebecca. And next up, we have Lauren.
Hi everyone, my name is Lauren. I am a graduate student at the University of Colorado Boulder, currently getting my PhD in biochemistry. I participated in the research challenge in 2012. I only participated for 1 year, but then I went to work for Karen and the department during my undergrad at the University of New Mexico, where I graduated with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology and Chemistry. And the research challenge was a really good experience for me. It really exposed me to kind of forming a research question and being able to communicate my findings and communicate with other scientists in the field. So it was a really great introduction to my eventual career.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lauren. And next up, we have Jarek.
Yeah, hi, I'm Jarek. I'm a senior in environmental engineering at MIT. A lot of the research I've done as an undergrad has focused on the oceans, looking at oxygen deficient zones, which are large regions completely devoid of oxygen due to lots of plankton productivity, microbial activity, that sort of thing. These regions are really important because the microbes living there consume lots of nitrogen and they can emit powerful greenhouse gases like N2O into the atmosphere. For science fair, a lot of my projects were all about soil. I started working in I first participated in regionals in 2011. I went to ISEF as a student observer in 2013, and then was a finalist in 2014, 15, and 17. I think what I gained the most out of that experience was just the many opportunities to not only practice my professional communication skills and learn how to talk about science to a variety of audiences, but also just the ability to connect with so many other like-minded people my age who were also very interested in research.
That's great. Thank you so much. And next we have Lynn.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Lynn, and I'm currently a junior at UNM's BA/MD program, majoring in biochemistry with minors in psychology and health medicine and human values. I'm currently working in a lab of the chemical and biological engineering department, actually, related to nanoparticle technology and cancer therapies, so mix of the medicine. In terms of science fair, I participated in the research challenge starting when I was in 8th grade, so that was back in 2014, and I continued throughout high school and competed at ISEF in 2015, 16, and 18. And I feel like the part that I enjoyed the most about science fair was just being able to see and talk with other students who were just as interested in STEM as I was. And I think especially at the international level, I was really inspired to see what other students were able to accomplish, and that kind of helped me make the decision to continue to pursue science. But yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Excuse me. Next up, we have Kristen.
Hi, yes. So my name is Kristen, and I'm a junior at the University of New Mexico, also in the BA/MD program. And I am double majoring in Spanish and health medicine and human values. And I'm going for minors in biology and chemistry. So I'm a pre-med student right now. And I started competing in science fair in 6th grade. So I competed in the regional science fair from 2012 to 2018, so all through middle school and high school. And I competed in state for several of those years, and I attended ISEF in 2014 as an observer. And I think there were 2 main takeaways from my time with science fair. And the first would be just seeing how passionate people can be about different things and how much people can accomplish when they really go after their passions, I think is really inspiring. And then the other would be just the people that I've met throughout my time with science fair. It was really amazing. I made a lot of lasting friendships with the people I was competing against, as well as meeting a lot of great people who've served as mentors and provided a lot of great opportunities since then.
Wonderful. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Next up, we have Daniel.
All right. Hi, I am Daniel Appel, still in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've completed a master's in space systems engineering from Stevens Institute of Technology, and I'm still completing my PhD in systems engineering from the same place. My science fair participation actually goes back before 1998, but I was a participant in what is now the Research Challenge from 1998 through 2005. That included being able to go to the first year of what is now the Broadcom Masters competition, but it was then the Discover Young Scientist Challenge, where I got to do that as a sixth grader. Even won a prize where I got to spend an afternoon with Charles Walker at Kennedy, now Space Force Station, and got to see stuff that even one of the first astronauts for the space shuttle hadn't gotten to see himself, which was absolutely crazy. That was really amazing. In high school, I think I'm unique in that I've been able to place first, second, third, and fourth at ISEF, which is really bizarre accomplishment unlocked, but being able to go to that for 4 years was really amazing. One of the other really fun opportunities was I was able to go to the APEC Youth Science Festival in Beijing with actually a lot of friends that I'd already made, but being able to go to Beijing and have an awesome time with people around the world that I still keep in touch with is absolutely amazing. One of the biggest things I got out of this whole thing was being able to participate in what really was cutting edge research, even as a middle schooler and high school student. I got to learn what research really is and just be a part of it. And it's a completely different thing when you feel like you've contributed something to a field later on, where you would normally suffer from imposter syndrome of, am I really actually helping? If you've already gotten that out of the way as a middle schooler, it's really amazing. So after some of that, I made decisions that resulted in me being in the Marine Corps for 6 years, which was actually a really awesome experience. I figured out I was a terrible linguist, but was really good with radio stuff. And through Science Fair, I got to participate in the DARPA Spectrum Challenge, which indirectly led to the job I'm doing now. My day job actually consists of, I do everything from talking to machinists who are bending and cutting and fabricating metal, to physicists who are doing relativistic vacuum physics in my day job, which is actually really exciting. And they actually let me work on my PhD, which is the other funny observation I've made listening to all of you guys, where you're at with your education and doing really awesome stuff. Like Susanna, I was able to go straight into judging after Science Fair as a way to give back. And that's actually turned into my PhD topic, because realizing that being able to come back, having actually, I think, judged almost everybody else's projects at one point or another, I've actually learned just how much giving back through STEM outreach can be a tremendous thing. And when the time came to choose what topic I wanted to work on for PhD research, I realized that if I can explain how much value there was for me in a larger sense so that other people can join in on it, that's become its entire research area. And part of why I'm back here making everybody bored listening to me, but it really has been amazing, and having the opportunity to do that from all kinds of different sides has been just amazing.
That's really inspiring and amazing, Daniel. Thank you so much. All right, Kenneth, go ahead.
So I guess I could say I'm Dr. Kenneth Armijo. I actually grew up in a small rural town in New Mexico called Sabinal, New Mexico. We were a farming town, and the Regional Science Fair, now called the Research Challenge, starting from 1994 to 1999, I was able to complete experiments that actually were looking at how to improve different aspects of plant life and botany and biology, but also I did some projects in regards to engineering. It was during the Regional Science Fair that I met judges that actually were affiliated with NASA. 2 years later, I worked at NASA's Johnson Space Center within Mission Control in the Space Shuttle program. And I did a number of projects with NASA, got my bachelor's at UNM in mechanical engineering. And after the Columbia accident, I decided to basically go to grad school. I went actually first, I worked at the Stanford Linear Accelerator Center Then went to Berkeley for my master's, PhD, and business degrees, all in mechanical and chemical engineering and then management of technology in their MBA program. Got my postdoc at Sandia National Labs in photovoltaics. And now I'm a senior member of the technical staff. I lead a lot of research in high temperature flux applications for salts and concentrating solar power for Sandia National Labs. I work with about 11 different countries all over the world, developing next generation solar and nuclear power plants. And a lot of my student interns who are also PhD students for that also are now actually in the regional science fair. So it's actually neat to see things full circle. I've also been a judge in the regional science fair since I graduated from UNM. So.
Are we ready to move on to some questions? What do you guys think?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, let's first talk about when you're participating in the research challenge at the regionals, what your projects were, what got you interested in your topics. I'll start a little bit, and actually Daniel reminded me too about where your projects can take you. I worked with fisheries, so I did salmon research in New Mexico, and then it took me to British Columbia. I ended up making several discoveries, writing some papers, and getting a fully patented device that not only being able to do research in another country was amazing, but it also offered the opportunity to give the keynote speech at the International Women in Science Conference in Alexandria, Egypt. It was amazing. Intel paid my whole way. I was 16 years old giving a speech at the Library of Alexandria. It was amazing. And so all of that from, like a country girl who liked to go fishing, that just started asking questions about things I enjoyed. And it turned into all of that. And it turned into, like my spark for field work and going to college. And, after college, I just wanted to get back in the field, And so that's kind of like what the fair did for me and took me forward. So what are your guys's, what were you doing at the fair? What were your topics and how did it spring you forward into your careers?
Yeah, I can talk about that a bit. So I guess all of my research at the science fair was about soil biogeochemistry. And I guess to explain what that is and how I got interested in it, I grew up in the East Mountains about 5 minutes away from the Cibola National Forest. So I spent pretty much all my free time hanging out in the mountains, hiking around, and I got really interested in environmental science and climate change and those sorts of big topics that way. What I did after that, my high school and my middle school partnered with this organization called the Bosque Ecosystem Monitoring Program. They do lots of citizen science sort of STEM outreach programs where they organize field trips and you can go to the Rio Grande Bosque and do some field work. I really enjoyed doing the field work. Just being able to see the environment that I was working in was very important to me. And it was through them that I was able to get in touch with some folks at the University of New Mexico Biology Department, doing lots of work on soil science. And at first, I didn't really think there was a whole lot going on in the ground, in dirt. But as I started thinking about more of it, I was just completely blown away by the complexity of soils, all the microbial communities living within them. I remember reading this one statistic that if you take 1 gram of soil from a forest, there could be 100 meters of fungal filaments in there. So just that sort of idea of all these organisms living in this tiny, microscopic, but extremely complex habitat was very interesting to me. So I ended up doing some research. One of my first projects at the science fair was about adding different amendments to soil to improve the carbon use efficiency of microbes living there, basically trying to improve conditions in the soil so that all the bacteria living there can, hold on to more of the carbon that they take up from the environment instead of emitting it as CO2. This is really important because there's something like 2.3 trillion tons of carbon in soil around the world, and 60 billion tons of that gets emitted as CO2 every year. So the scale of this is just totally mind-boggling. So that was one of the things I worked in. And then more recently, I was able to publish one of my projects from Science Fair that was about how changes in rainfall patterns might affect different microbial communities in soil, including these really cool consortia of cyanobacteria and lichens and all sorts of different organisms called biological soil crusts that can bring nutrients into the soil and stabilize the soil surface. So I think the main thing that got me into this was being able to grow up seeing the outdoors, wanting to study something in the environment, and then I just found this system that was really interesting to me. And I think that it has sort of remained a sort of motivating theme for me as I think about my future research ideas and questions. Is this whole idea of how processes that happen at microscopic scales within individual soil pores or in these tiny environments are really important and really complex, but it's also really cool to think about how those processes sort of cascade up to a global scale and affect the global climate. So that's biogeochemistry in a nutshell, and that's how I really got involved in it.
That's great. I really appreciate you sharing. And I think it really shows that even the smallest thing, like you said, can just blow up at the larger scale, and it can really thrust you into your career. And I think that can be said about everybody here. Like everybody's had, even if you didn't go into the same topic like you did, it may have sparked something else, So to lead into that, Katie, do you maybe want to talk about how you discovered your spark to go into your career and why you chose your specific path?
Sure, I would love to. I think it'll touch a little bit on the previous question as well. It definitely ties in, but really the spark was participation in the first research project that I was able to do for the science fair. That at the time I had an interest in cancer biology. I started emailing professors at the university to just really, the ask was to come in and just talk about what they do in their day-to-day jobs, and to talk about how I might be able to set up a science fair project on my own at my home based on that topic. And there was one professor, Dr. Stephanie Ruby from the Cancer Center, who invited me to come to her lab, showed me the lab, we started talking, and she invited me to come once a week to do a small project in the lab. So that was just incredibly lucky. I feel so fortunate that I had that experience. That turned into, after completing the first science fair project and spending about a semester of time once a week for a couple of hours in the lab, turned into a summer internship in that same laboratory. And that's where it just really blossomed, getting exposure to so many different topics. The lab worked on a model yeast system called Saccharomyces cerevisiae, a budding yeast. And at the time, that was one of the first genomes that was fully sequenced. And so we were super, at that time, on the cutting edge, really, of having a lot of genetics tools, having a genome sequence. So I was able to see so much. And Dr. Ruby was so connected with a lot of different people, not just in New Mexico, but other places, a very strong scientist who really cared about developing her students. And so that kind of kept that spark alive in me, and was a big reason why I chose to stay at UNM for my undergraduate degree, because I was able to continue my research with her and publish on my work. And then that really set me on the path to where I am today. So just really inspiring to have, I think, a strong female scientist as well early in my career.
Absolutely. Thank you. So the next thing I want to talk about is what we find the most fascinating and interesting things that we get to do, or like in our field, whether we're still in school or if we're actually, in our careers. I'll say for me, I like being able to go from, roughing it in a remote area, camping, working, living the life, being dirty, doing the real research on the ground, to being in the office and making it happen on a much larger like federal scale. And you know what made that possible was the whole process of science fair, from what's our question, what's our experiment, where's our hypothesis going, what are our procedures, our results, and then all the way up to, you know, here we are at ISEF, and we're talking to professors, PhDs, Nobel laureates, etc. And so those were the most fascinating things to me. So I'll give this over to Daniel, maybe. Do you want to talk about that? About the most fascinating things that you get to do?
Sure, because it's going to be hard to actually pick out crazy options, but weirdly, one of the most crazy interesting things I actually get to do came out of a question I asked during a science fair project. So what I was mostly working on through high school was taking enzymes from fungi and putting them into electrochemical cells to make a biofuel cell. And it came out of a particular fungus rot. And what I was trying to do is figure out how to get those working on carbon electrodes, so different multi-walled carbon nanotubes, which sounds really cool. And in practice, it made a lot more questions than I had answers to. And we were trying to figure out the actual working part that would reduce oxygen from the air, why it would actually move current to these electrodes. And that question, I was actually talking to my girlfriend at the time, now wife, and her mentor was trying to get help building a long-range charged particle interaction piece of a high-performance computing model so that we could understand how this charge portion actually moves. And they really were trying to find an example system that they could test and compare against real-world data. And they also needed a team that could put together some of the code to run that. So myself and a few of my friends at our high school, we did a project on that, did the supercomputing challenge with it, and got a bunch of stuff working on it. And I learned about what particle in cell simulations were. And then fast forward, I think this would have been almost 10 years, and I go and I start working with all these physicists that do high performance computing models on these really cool relativistic systems. And suddenly I learned that their entire job is validating particle and cell codes ran in parallel high performance computing solutions. And here I am, this like dumb new systems engineer, where most of my added value is I can come in being the new guy, ask dumb questions. And then suddenly I asked a smart question that really threw them off. But to me, one of the like most fascinating things about that whole thing is everything that I learned, all of the questions I asked, sometimes even the non-answers that I got to them, the learning that occurred so that I could at least understand it better and ask a smarter question, the value of that never goes away. And sometimes it'll come back in the craziest ways you would never imagine, just because that same curiosity and wondering about it, well, now I get to wonder about it even more during my day job and help them answer these really complicated, harder questions with a lot more money on the line and national security implications, just because something I asked when I was in 9th grade turned into learning about one modeling technique.
That's a huge impact. That's amazing. And I like how you talked about that, you know, even when you're getting the non-answers, that helps solve the bigger picture, right? Because we never actually, it's not every day that we get the supporting evidence for our hypothesis, right? It's a lot of times it's everything else, and it's the other questions. So I think it's really perfect that you brought that up. And so now I'd like to see maybe Rebecca, if like what gave you your spark to go into your career, and what's the most interesting and fascinating things that you get to learn?
Yeah, totally. It's been a really interesting journey for me, I think. Growing up doing like the research projects, a lot of my projects were never like past a year-long event, right? I never could really settle on one thing. And the project that ended up going to like the International Science Fair had to do with, it was a lot of like biomedical interdisciplinary work with computer science, which I think like even getting that validation that like that was possible, like an interdisciplinary approach to computing with like anything else, is the basis for where I'm at in my undergraduate career. Specifically, like right now, I'm super excited about like data science and the way data can be used ethically in the ways it's not used ethically for a lot of communities, right? And so now I'm kind of settling into this, my interdisciplinary approach being really rooted in the communities that I engage with. I currently work as a student staff at El Centro Chicano y Latino. So like having a space where I can interact with multiple identities that I have. And so a lot of my research right now that I'm super into is natural language processing and the way language can be analyzed and computed is really interesting, especially for like a multilingual perspective and how that factors into like who gets counted and who doesn't get counted kind of thing. So yeah, that's kind of where I am with my research interests.
That's wonderful. And I think that that has a broader impact right now in our current climate and where we are in the world. So that's even better. I'm going to see you on TV someday, I'm sure. Next, Lynn, how about you? Will you tell us a little bit about your spark and motivation and, you know, what's driving you to where you're at and what you're pursuing in your career?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess I think where kind of my motivation came from was just my very first research experience. Similar to Katie, I ended up just kind of emailing a lot of random professors that I kind of searched online in the biology department, and I was like, oh, their research seems really interesting. And I kind of just asked if they could mentor me on a science fair project, and luckily one of them said yes. And so I think that is what really kind of just was like the starting point of my adventure into kind of just science and STEM in general. And I think I continued doing research all throughout high school, and I'm actually still doing research now in undergrad, more related to medicine. And I think kind of just getting that first step in research helped me solidify, one, my love for science, two, kind of the journey and the questions and the setbacks that I faced throughout research kind of helped me also find out that I love medicine, and that's why I kind of decided to pursue the UNM BA/MD program, kind of pursue my MD, and hopefully become a physician in the future. But yeah, that's mostly kind of just a starting point.
I think that's awesome. And, you know, another thing too about seeking out mentors, I think it's really important. All of us have somebody that we had help us along the way. And I think that maybe we should all talk a little bit about that. So Kristen, can you talk about somebody who mentored you on your pathway?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, I've had a few different mentors that have been really vital to my successes up until this point. And one would definitely be a doctor that I was actually able to work with during my research that I conducted for science fair. So my science fair project had to do with developing a screening test to detect early signs of macular degeneration. And when this disease, it's a degenerative disease of the eye that causes people to lose their vision with age. And when this disease is caught early enough, it can be treated to prevent its further degradation. So there isn't actually a cure for it at this point, but I was able to work with a doctor, Dr. Ramaya, here in New Mexico, and he was able to kind of guide me along some of the research that I was conducting then. And then outside of just the research path, I think I've had a lot of teachers and professors who have been really vital to my success and have been really helpful in supporting me along the way. So I had a few different teachers in high school that I really looked up for, and I think looked up to, and I was really able to push myself more because I knew that they were supporting me and that I had someone that kind of believed in me and knew that I could succeed. So I think those have been really helpful and motivational people along the way that have helped me to maintain the trajectory that I've been on and ultimately to choose to pursue my passions that lie in medicine. And like Lynn, apply for the BA/MD program at UNM, and with this end goal of becoming a physician here in New Mexico.
I love that. That's wonderful. So I'm going to move on to another question, and I think this one is going to be really good for Ken. If you had to describe your career journey in 3 words, what would you choose?
Well, it's pretty loaded for 3 words, but I would say passion, finding something you love and never working another day in your life again. That's how I feel my entire life has been. Second word, opportunity. Never turn down any opportunity, because I've done science policy research in Washington, D.C. I've gone to International Panel on Climate Change meetings for the renewable energy work I do. And I've had a number of startup companies that have been bought. And so I'd say never turn down any opportunity. And then the last one I would say is almost adventure. Part of it is, I think part of what makes a scientist and an engineer great is being able to go outside your comfort zone. If you're never going to be able to go outside your comfort zone, you'll never be comfortable. And I've had a lot of situations where I had to have a technical hat on, and then I had to have a business hat on, and I had to have a policy mind on. And I feel throughout my journeys, I've done research that has kind of interwoven different things. I've done Engineers Without Borders and worked in different countries, and had to realize that science, the science we do, at least mine in renewable energy, climate change, and even some of the military, have social implications. And it's important as a scientist to be mindful of these things and ask the hard questions and have the humility to also be able to ask people for help and get information that you need. And I feel like that's some of the things that have helped me have a very successful career right now in research.
Thank you. I agree. Adventure is one of my main words for my career as well. An opportunity. For me, where I am now, if I had not taken the opportunity at this particular job, I wouldn't be doing all of the extra things. I'd still be like, what am I going to do? Which pathway am I going to go? Am I going to get, it just, you have to follow the opportunity, and you have to be able to take risks, and your humility is a big deal in that too, because you got to get out of your comfort zone. And then I wanted to ask Lauren about 3 words that describes your career journey.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say first, persistence. Definitely science is a field where we have to persist and really figure out a question, stick with it, get all our evidence correct, and make sure that we're following the right line. I'd also say openness. It's really important to keep open to new ideas. My research experiences at Sandia National Labs as an undergraduate led me to many different projects that I never would have thought of working on, just because I was open to it and open to the work. And lastly, I just say determination. I really think that if you're determined to do something, it'll see its way through and you'll be able to finish it out. And yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask Jarek, as a current student, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, so I am wrapping up grad admissions season. So I've got quite a few really exciting offers to do a PhD in geosciences, or kind of continue this biogeochemistry kind of research I've been doing. So I think, ideally I'll be working on that while on the way to my dissertation. And, I think I just want to reiterate what others said too about trying new things or following opportunities that might be outside of your comfort zone, because I think that that's kind of been a big thing for me as well. Like, I came from doing soils research here to working with oceanographers. I even spent some time at sea, and that was kind of crazy for someone growing up who hadn't seen the ocean really much until he went to college. But it was a very rewarding experience for me, and I think that that's something I've thought about a lot too, as I sort of pick where I'm going to get my PhD. Is, how much room will I have to explore multiple areas and sort of build an interdisciplinary skill set that I can use to get at a lot of these environmental questions that rely on many different fields of science, and benefit from that kind of knowledge to really understand what's going on.
That's great. And I have the same question for Lynn. Where do you see yourself in 5 years while you're currently a student?
Yeah, so let's see. So right now I'm in my junior year in undergrad. And with the BA&D program, right after undergrad, I would go and attend UNM's medical school. So I guess hopefully in 5 years, I'd be graduating medical school on my way to residency. But even though I'm pursuing only an MD, I really hope that I would be able to continue doing research kind of like I am now, but especially throughout medical school, and hopefully maybe even branch out to different fields. So I kind of started doing research in like more biological I transferred now to more like chemical engineering or nanomedicine, and maybe in medical school I can do something else maybe related to more clinical type research and things like that. So we'll see.
That's great. And, you know, Daniel, I was going to ask you, because you're currently a student, but you're also currently in your career field. So can you tell us where you see yourself in 5 years, not only doing the stuff you do on a daily basis for your job, but while also pursuing your PhD, especially outreach with, you know, the younger generation and mentoring students to hopefully become scientists?
Right. Okay. It's actually a harder question because I'm kind of at the end of a lot of those 5 to 10 year process plans. I have to button up a dissertation, and that is all that's left for my PhD. Since I have all the classes done and the publications kind of out of the way, which still hasn't fully dawned on me that I'm actually getting to be done with the process. That doesn't sound right. But it's actually been crazy that I'm able to work at the same time, which is providing a lot more valuable experience. Some of the direct mentorship I'm actually able to get working with somebody on really hard projects. It's still education, it's still continuing, it's still ongoing and super duper valuable. Uh, so I work for, let's see, we are now Blue Halo. We do contracting with the Air Force Research Laboratory, and I get to make really cool stuff. I mean, I wish I could talk more about it, but it's really cool stuff that actually means we're blowing up less things when we have strategic things to do, which is really cool and really exciting. But a lot of what we can actually do and approach from that, we have to kind of come at it from a planning perspective of where can I be a few years from now, and what things do I have to overcome. And a lot of what that process has been is, instead of kind of going straight up to a brick wall and bashing my head through it and trying to push all the way through it, which sometimes it works really good. And sometimes you learn a lot when you realize your forehead is not, you're not as hard-headed as you hoped or thought. But it's actually kind of one where you discover that it's really more about building a ramp to get you over that if you can see that it's coming. And usually that involves bringing in help, pulling in people to help you out, or have them show you, well, it's actually smarter to go about it this way. You don't have to get all the way over it to kind of figure out that problem. And that process over years can actually add up to something cool. So as far as where I see myself in years, just because I've stopped taking classes and that I'm wrapping up with my PhD, I am nowhere near done learning. The learning side of that is completely continuous, and the point at which I stopped learning means I've stopped having fun. And I think that's kind of the biggest one that especially the research challenge can kind of teach you is, if you're having fun and optionally doing something well above and beyond just because you had something that interested you and you wanted to go do more of it, that's where the fun is. I mean, it's not, you can never expect anything to be all fun. I mean, work, the best job you'll ever have, they still have to pay you some days. But is it worthwhile enough that you can make it fun, you can make it rewarding, and make it be something you want to do? And as long as I can keep doing that 5 years from now, then I'm still doing great. And that's what I'll make it happen. And yeah, it's right now I have what is a total dream job, and I still have to ask myself week on week, what do I want to be when I grow up? Because all the options are there. Do I want to make spaceship parts? Like, well, I'm already doing that. It's like, do I want to make rockets? I'm doing that. It's, do I want to be a physicist, or do I want to be a chemical engineer, or do I want to be a modeling and simulations big data computer scientist? And those are all part of my day job. So the answer is, I may not ever know what I want to be when I grow up because I don't have to grow up.
Oh, I love that. My father, who's also a research scientist, said, you know, growing older is mandatory, but growing up is optional. And I still ask myself the same questions, you know, do I want to grow up? What am I going to be when I grow up? I have my career, but I'm also, you know, getting into like sustainable farming and, you know, like juggling all of that kind of stuff. And I would never really go that pathway if it hadn't been for science fair. That I start to ask questions like, what else can I do? Well, I mean, yeah, I'm an archaeologist. I do research. Well, what else can I do in my free time? Because I get bored and I can't stop having fun, or I can't stop learning. So Next, I would like to ask Katie what advice you would give a pre-college student who might be interested in pursuing a career in a STEM field.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ask a lot of questions and reach out to people. I see now as a high school student, it was a little naive to just start blasting a bunch of professors with emails like, can I come talk to you? But actually that's probably, something that more people should do and should feel really comfortable doing, because everybody on this call certainly, I think, would answer those types of emails. And people really enjoy talking about what they're doing. And so I think that being able to just seize any opportunity that you have to get a taste of fields that you're interested in, if it's just spending 30 minutes talking to somebody, asking them about what they do, if it's being able to go and shadow somebody or have a short internship in that area, I think all of those are really hugely valuable to gain insight in different areas and be open to things that are unexpected that you may not have ever considered. If an opportunity comes up, just take it. You won't regret doing that.
I just want to kind of echo what you were saying, Katie, in terms of not being afraid to reach out and ask for, even if you're not asking for a mentor, if you just need to ask a question of somebody who has expertise in a field you're doing your project in. I think that, probably at least 95% of professionals and professional researchers love the opportunity to talk about their work. And most love the opportunity to talk about their work with up and coming scientists and researchers, right? And I think that's something that a lot of pre-college students are afraid of. Like it's scary. Not so much scary to stick an email out there, but it's a little scary to think, well, what if they answer me? Then what? But I think if you do make that effort and you do take the initiative, those folks on the other end of those emails or those phone calls are happy to have those conversations.
I agree, Karen. And I always tell kids when I talk to them when they're real nervous, and it's like, to get over the anxiety, what's the worst that could happen? Someone says no. If that's the worst that can happen, but the best thing that could happen is mentoring, scholarships, opportunity. Well, I would take the possibility of the worst being no. And I think that's really important. Let's see, Lauren, how about you? What would you give a pre-college student advice for entering a STEM field?
Sure, yeah, I definitely want to echo Karen and Katie. Definitely getting out there and communicating with professors that you're interested in is the best thing that you can do. And being open to whatever work they can give you is the best thing you can do. I would also suggest reading. Definitely reading around, seeing what research interests you and being familiar with what is the latest in your respective field or whatever field you're interested in. That's always a great place to start. It gets your mind thinking on new ideas and what you could possibly be interested in. I would also recommend this book that I just got and I'm reading myself. It's called Letters to a Young Scientist by Edward Wilson. And it's kind of a really good memoir about just not being afraid in your career and not being afraid to answer questions, be curious, and really get out there and get your hands in the real research that's happening.
And Kristen has something to add.
Yeah, definitely. I just wanted to say that I totally want to echo what everyone has been saying. I think increasing your exposure to as many different opportunities as you can early on is amazing. And it's never too early to start. You're never too young to start trying out new things, and just seek out as many different avenues that you can. And you'll never know what you're passionate about. You never know where you may find a passion if you don't try it. And I think throughout high school and undergrad, I've been able to try so many unique things that I was totally uncomfortable with at first. Like, I was in a refugee well-being program while at the University of New Mexico during my freshman year, and it was totally out of my comfort zone. I had absolutely no experience. I was the youngest person in the class as a freshman, but I learned so much, and I think it was such a valuable experience, and I can take so many of those lessons and apply it to medicine and my future healthcare career, and realize how I can be an advocate for my patients in the future. And just realizing so many different struggles that different people face in their day-to-day lives, and how to kind of work through the different systems in our society and in our government and our healthcare. And I think without that experience, I wouldn't have any of those types of perspectives, and they're going to be vital to my career later on. So I would really just encourage any student to try different things that they may not know anything about, that they may be completely leery about trying, or maybe even nervous, but just trying different things and seeing where you might find passions that you never knew you had.
Thank you so much. And Rebecca has something she'd like to say on the same topic. So go ahead.
Yeah, and then I also see Ken. Ken is getting excited too. Yeah, just to echo what Kristen's saying, I think a big part for me growing up and like trying to find my research area was that like a lot of the things that interested me were not considered like valid research areas, right? Or like even the notion of what is considered a scientist, what's considered like an engineering research topic, right? Like, so I guess my one thing would be to like get rid of that notion altogether. I think especially in my undergrad research journey, it's like the validation that comes from like personal experiences and being able to use personal insight in regards to like actual interests that you would be interested in is a super important thing that I don't think I like had settled in as like a research participant for a while.
Great. And then Ken, how about you?
Yeah, so one thing that I'd like to highlight is whenever we're working in the industry and in government or academia, we have to work within something NASA came up called technology readiness level. And what that means is that there's very fundamental research where we have very fundamental science, we're publishing journals, publishing all these articles. Then you have high level technology readiness level, which is application centric type of work where you're actually building things, you're actually seeing it go to market, you're seeing things go out into the world and everyone's using it, like whether it be a power plant or a Fitbit device. So one of the things though that helps you to understand the different levels of where your passions are as a fundamental researcher or an applied researcher is getting at your education, keep furthering it, go to graduate school, get a master's, get a PhD, and never think that you're not smart enough. I was a farm kid picking chili, and somehow I went from a post-hole digger to an actual PhD degree. And the thing that I would say is that the further you go in your education, you'll start to see the intersection of all these different fields. So that question of what do I want to be when I grow up becomes easier to answer. So keep going with your education and you'll see how everything intersects, even with business and policy. And those days that you start wondering, like, what do I want to do? I'm nervous of getting out of technology. I want to go into business, let's say, or into law or something else. It makes it a little bit easier because you have all these skill sets. Like you get all these tools as you go along the way, and your toolbox by the time you get a PhD is huge, and you can basically do whatever you want. So I guess that's one of the things I like to highlight.
That's great. Thank you very much. Let's move on to another set of questions. So let's see, who do I want to pick on this time? Let's see, Jarek, what has been a barrier that you've faced, and what advice would you have for others about how to overcome challenges and if they encounter them when it comes to STEM careers? I know that you're still in school, but there's a lot of challenges that we all have in our degrees.
Yeah, so I think one thing that's important to recognize and that I've kind of wrestled with is that a lot of research can be really exciting, cool results that get you, some fancy publication or get you really excited about your work. But a lot of it is also failure. Like things in the lab don't work as you thought they would. Things take way longer than you think they're going to take to actually happen. This is been, or like if you're doing field work like I've done, I had a lot of my data for one of those projects I worked on really messed up because the remnants of a hurricane came through New Mexico and messed with my rainfall manipulation experiment. So, it's unpredictable, and science is about, you know, asking interesting questions and all that, but it's also about adapting and dealing with things that don't go your way. And I think that's something that I've kind of wrestled with a lot, and how to not take that personally, how to not sort of look down on yourself if things don't work out as you want them to, how to take care of your mental health as you're working with all that, but also learning from those failures and realizing that not all of them are just some huge mistake, and that a lot of the most interesting things that you might find out about come from something happening that you didn't expect.
Absolutely. And, something that Karen has brought up is, as a theme, I think that everybody here has, is this resiliency. We all develop a resiliency. But the other thing, too, is I think that we should talk about how important it is to be effective communicators and collaborators, and that we never do this alone. So let's see, maybe Lauren, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about what you see as important being an effective communicator, collaborator, and just resiliency.
Definitely. Yeah. As scientists, I think we're really lucky that we always have a great group of people around us supporting us and kind of bouncing off ideas off of one another. So that's definitely one of the main things that allows us to do the work that we do, is the relationships we have, the connections we have, and our communication skills. I think the most important thing in communicating our research to other people is kind of like these, like the research challenge, like these opportunities where we're available to present our research, meet new people, talk about our findings, and see if we can get new ideas and new followings with people that we never would have met before.
I agree. I know something in my career is there's so many people and working parts to one project, from, planners to the environmental scientists to archaeologists to right-of-way agents to the engineers. Like, you really see how you have to talk and communicate with everybody. You have to be resilient. A lot of times we're working with federal funds and regulations, and we have to be able to work as a team. And I know, like at science fair, right, we're competing against each other, but we're also learning how to work as a team. And I think that that's really important for everybody, is to see that it does take every single person talking, every single person working together, and that, like sometimes you just have a bad day, but when you're part of a team, they don't let you fall. And I think that everybody at science fair has helped each other. Everybody's had those days. Like Karen is like a second mom to me. She's seen me like, my happiest and my saddest. And that's just part of life, right? And so if we can communicate all of the aspects of our lives in our professional careers and in our research careers, we'll have better teams of people. And you know what? We all want to do better and more good for the world. That's the way to do it. So let's talk a little bit more about barriers we've all faced. And let's see, who hasn't gone in a while? Lynn, would you like to talk about barriers you may have faced?
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the barriers is kind of just similar to what Jarek said, is research is definitely just a very, you can't predict the future with research, I guess you could say. I remember spending months on maybe like a single experiment because I tried multiple things and it kept failing over and over again. And I think one of the biggest things for me in terms of kind of just overcoming that barrier is just remembering why I'm doing that research or pursuing that path in the first place, and kind of looking at the bigger picture. So maybe in that experiment, just remember that, this can lead to a publication or helping others, or, maybe technology that helps with medicine or other therapies. Or even in my undergraduate career, going outside of research, maybe I did poorly on like an exam or a project or something, but kind of just remembering that, hey, the bigger picture is I want to pursue medicine. That's the reason why I am kind of, going through these challenges. And it kind of helps give you that resilience and determination to kind of just keep pushing through these barriers, even if they do keep coming up over and over again. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let's see, Rebecca, what did you do as a high school student to prepare for an undergrad student focusing on the pursuit of a STEM career?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think a lot about like even how I got here, because in high school, outside of like actual school and like the science fair, like my main curricular activity was dancing flamenco, right? And so it's like it's this really interesting intersection of a lot of things that like wouldn't be considered preparation for a STEM career, but for me it is very much a preparation of a STEM career in the way that I've paved it, as far as who I want to be paying attention to in my research, who not like, I think the biggest thing for me is knowing who to follow. Like I don't always have to be a leader in a lot of things, and like having a lot of intuition, I think, developed in high school about like who builds the best type of community for me, who is the best support system for me, who engages me in like really critical questions about like how I apply these things, right? And how that for me like really solidified the type of research that I want to get into STEM, and like validated it, right? I think without that kind of community and support system, I definitely would not be as excited or as motivated to like get into these really weird research topics sometimes, that sometimes aren't considered STEM, but like again are like really interesting, innovative ways of thinking about things.
I really like that approach. Thank you very much. And how about you, Katie? What did you do as a high school student to prepare?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just really similar to Rebecca, you know, thinking about how you surround yourself with the type of people and opportunities that support where you want to go. And so it was really just spending a lot of time thinking about how the direction that I wanted to go in, but also realizing that I didn't need to know exactly what that was. So just being really open to whatever opportunities were thrown my way. And so I think that was a big part of that transition between high school and going to an undergraduate program, was the openness, just being really open to embracing whatever comes your way and building that resiliency to keep pushing forward when things don't always go as planned, because it never will. It never will go as exactly as you plan for it to be.
Rebecca brought up something in the chat. If you want to go ahead and expand a little bit on it, Rebecca, that'd be great.
No, yeah, sure. I think what like everyone's kind of making me think all the time, but like Lynn even talking about the bigger picture, I think that's kind of what like a support system brings. Like that's a privilege, right? Like even having a stable support system and how that interacts with like this idea of resiliency. Yeah, and like I think the bigger picture is afforded to me because of the really strong support system, which I think is really strong, like an important thing to acknowledge that like a lot of people don't get, right?
Absolutely, I agree. So I would like to go ahead and open the floor in this round robin that we have. And I'd like it to be, you know, if any of you want to share something that is really important that we haven't touched on, or you have questions, or you just want to share, I'm giving it all away to you.
Even questions for each other is fine.
Yes.
I just thought of something. I guess like for everyone else, how has like what you consider to be like your STEM knowledge, right? How has that incorporated itself or been useful in like other aspects of your life? I don't know if that question makes sense, but.
That one makes a lot of sense for me. You know, STEM, obviously, you know, college and my career, it's all these processes, right? But then when I started farming, like something catastrophic can happen. And Ken can attest to this, growing up in Savinal, is like, you can have like a ditch blow out, right? But like, whereas I think the average person sees it as a catastrophe, my STEM background automatically starts looking at it and saying, okay, so what do I have here? What are the solutions? What can I try, etc. So even like the smallest things like farming, it really, my STEM background has helped me be better in that field. It's helped me be a better parent. I approach things differently. And so, everybody's like, you're the analytical one. It's because I do it with everything. That's just how my brain works. The STEM life.
Yeah, that almost like links into one of my mottos, is that like failure is always an option, but write it down so you can learn. Kind of the really old adage of you're always going to learn more from failure is true as long as you're learning. And again, science is about putting the process of learning. You take in more of that input data around it and be like, well, what can I learn from this? How can I learn from it? And suddenly failure stops being this terrible, horrible, intimidating thing. You learn a process to where failure is actually sometimes a gateway to new and amazing things that you wouldn't actually have expected or encountered otherwise. And it changes your relationship with failure entirely, and that's mind-blowing.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to add something to, I guess, what Dan and Susanna just touched on, which is Susanna touched on how it really has changed how she parents. I find that as well. I have a 6-year-old, and I think kids are naturally little scientists. They're always asking questions. They're always asking, they're always coming and asking why. And I don't give answers a lot of the times. And so I think my background in science has really pushed me as a parent to really turn it around to my daughter and to other young kids, to really say, well, what do you think? Or how do you think we could find out the answer? Because so frequently, adults can kind of stifle that. And I hate seeing that. And I really think that it's important that we take all that we've learned, and we really have this responsibility now to help encourage that next generation of curiosity. And so that's definitely something that came from all of my experiences. And the failure piece, like letting kids know it's okay to fail. And so for everybody who's in middle school, high school right now, like failures help you find your direction. They help you learn so much more than that short-term difficulty.
One of the things that this astronaut told me when I was at NASA was scientists can do anything, but not everything can necessarily always do what scientists do. And the thing that I learned in that is the scientific method: purpose, hypothesis, procedure, results, conclusion. We think of a science fair project whenever we think of those, but that scientific method, if you can actually be translated to a lot of other things. Well, for example, when I was in DC and I was doing science policy work with NASA later in my career, I would apply the scientific method to what is the fundamental problem that's happening right now in policy and in legislation. Here's a hypothesis for what I think could be done to improve it. And that's where you start surrounding yourself. And then how are you going to facilitate that? Hence your procedure. Then when you're done and you've actually done it, how do you quantify or qualify that you were even successful, or this piece of legislation, or if you write a business model and you're trying to run a business, even a small business. I help my parents out with our farm still, like Susanna was mentioning, farm kids know this inherently, just don't recognize as a scientific method. How are you going to evaluate the results? How are you going to evaluate that you're successful? And then conclusion, what are you going to do with that information? Like what's going to be the real nature, and what are you going to do to help others make an impact? And that, I think anyone can do the scientific method, but as scientists and engineers, I know in engineering, when I was at UNM for my undergrad, we did given, find, solution. That fundamental, simple process can be applied and done so well and keeps you organized in how you address any problem. You could solve anything from that. So I'd say to your question, Rebecca, the scientific method can go well beyond just scientific work.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Anyone else?
Well, just to wrap everything up, first of all, thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. I'm so excited about how this conversation went, and it's just so incredible to see all of you at all the different stages that you're in your career journeys and in life. Even though it sort of makes me feel old, that's okay. I think that it's so important for kids who are following you, right, to see themselves and see what the future can hold for them, and to hear from you, right? Because none of you look like stodgy old scientists, right? None of you. We don't have any white-haired, crazy Albert Einstein-looking people on this panel, which I think is incredible because, we still hear about, when little kids are asked to draw a scientist, right? Most of the time they draw a white guy with gray hair and a lab coat and a pencil, pocket protector. And that's not you guys, right? That's not the reality 99.9% of the time. So I think it's really important that we, offer these opportunities for students to see a different face of STEM, and what you guys are the current and future of STEM. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your experiences. And please don't be strangers. We're still here. I'm still in this position for at least another 6.5 years until I hit 25 years, which will be insane. But we so appreciate when you guys are able to come back and join us as judges or in other capacities, and very much appreciate you sharing your time and your Saturday with us.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you, everybody. It's been amazing seeing everybody and hearing everybody's experiences. You guys all changed my life forever, everybody, every single one of you.